And I want to skip ahead a little bit because, I mean, maybe not too far ahead. It feels like we've reached an inflection point with when at least AI made it to the mainstream with Chat GPT, and the UI suddenly made it put this really powerful tool in the hands of so many. I'm curious if you could maybe just give us the short version of like, what are the high level things that got us here, and why is this all happening now?
Yeah. Well, I think what's put AI in the mainstream has been a somewhat gradual process that we might say has been bubbling up since the origins of computer science. We might really say has started to ramp up starting in around 2011. So when I was at the University of Pennsylvania studying the science of skill acquisition, so actually human learning, so kind of the cognitive science of learning, if you will. This is 2011. This is when machine learning started becoming kind of a hot thing. And UPenn was working with Google on using natural language processing to interpret text from tweets and things like this. And this is when ImageNet happened. So 2011, computers got better than people at identifying flowers and insects and other things in simple pictures. This was kind of a benchline test that had been going on for years, but machine learning really smashed its way onto the map with that. And from there were waves and waves of kind of startup funding, a lot of development on things like deep learning, and systems gradually getting better and better. And essentially that's bubbled up to your OpenAIs and some of the impressive stuff that we see today. So I would say it's a bit of a gradual process, but I think OpenAI was a great big crescendo of that finally hitting sort of a consumer's face, because a lot of this has been behind dark corners in the B2B world. And we can talk about why, you and I talked off microphone before about why now is a time for AI adoption is much, much easier than it was, let's say, half a decade ago. And we could talk about many of those forces that have brought us here.
Totally. And I don't think this is an original thought of mine, but it does seem like the latest, greatest innovation in AI was the UI of Chat GPT. It wasn't necessarily and when I say UI, I don't just mean the visuals, I mean the whole entire system of interacting with a large language model.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big part of it. And it's, well, in the B2B world, often whether you can add value. So there's a lot of companies in AI, and there's a lot of broke companies in AI, a lot of companies that are dissembled, right? And that's fine. That's startups. I get it. I respect the grind. I cover these guys. I talk to these guys every day. Unicorn founders, people with 50 mil in the bank, people that got sold to big enterprises. Now they're inside some $50 billion company. It's a struggle, but a lot of the folks that, succeed to get, let's say, drug development professionals or anti-money laundering professionals to buy and keep spending money on their stuff is really a UX problem. In fact, we've seen this whole initial bunch of waves of AI, a lot of it, we could call this for better or worse, there's bigger conversations to be had here, it's been around workflow change minimization. In other words, how small is the change to my life for me to have to pay you to get benefit from AI? And so we might argue exactly the same thing has been the case in B2B, where it hasn't been who has had the fanciest, coolest, greatest models trained on the fanciest, coolest, greatest data. It's simply, does it interface seamlessly with the existing software I have? It just delivers me a value, and that's that. Now with ChatGPT, we have a simple little chat interface, looks like a lot of other applications we might use, that happens to give us this conversational access to a technology. And then you get Twitter taking it viral, you get a lot of factors turning it into something really big. So yeah, UI, UX, been a big deal from the get-go.
It reminds me of a conversation I've been having with this. It's a fairly large SDR team. They got about 120 SDRs. And I could confidently say, like, what we're going to do for them is automate their SDR research and cut down the amount of time it takes an SDR to like research an account, which is going to effectively double their SDR's activity. And when we were implementing a couple of tools, I was working with their enablement people, and the comment was, these guys are allergic to new tools. They've just implemented X, Y, and Z. We don't want to see any new tools. We need this to work directly into Salesforce, right? We don't want them to learn this. We don't want them to learn that. We don't want them to have to even know this tool exists. We just want to see the magic show up where we expect it to be, where we're already comfortable with it being.
100%. And brother, let's reality check right now. You're talking about a 120-person SDR team. which is probably a pretty fast-growing company. I might be wrong, but just imagine, Aflac. Just imagine, the biggest furniture retailer in the world. Just imagine how stodgy and change-resistant we are to workflow alterations in a company that was founded 110 years ago. So you see it even at that level. Again, there's real limitations to having to play at the surface all the time, just plug into people's existing tools. There's limitations to that, but it is somewhat inevitable that the first wave of benefits has to just be where people live already. And it's a big deal.